Kelli O'Hara needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce her anyway. Quickly, though, because I want to get to our little chat. Kelli has been nominated for 8 Tony Awards and won for Best Actress in a Musical for The King and I. Mm-hmm. She's starred on Broadway in Light in the Piazza, Pajama Game, South Pacific, Bridges of Madison County, Kiss Me Kate, and Days of Wine and Roses. She has been featured in a number of operas, and we are proud to call her our Westport neighbor. Welcome, Kelli.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
So you're not in Oklahoma anymore.
That's true.
How do you get from Elk City, Oklahoma to Westport, Connecticut? Or how do you get there from Elk City to Broadway first?
A big imagination. Absolutely. I didn't see a Broadway show till I was 21. I didn't visit New York until I was 21. I had movie musicals. I fell in love with the genre of musical theater and singing and acting through my parents' love of film, and they raised us on all sorts of wonderful musicals and also very dark black and white films. And so I think I just made up a story in my head that I wanted to do this. I also felt I can't explain this, but sometimes I've had these pangs as if I lived in a different time, like around the 1940s, New York City. The theater scene, definitely the Rodgers and Hammerstein beginning. And so I just knew. I made a decision pretty early on that that's what I was going to do. I never wavered from it. I had this wonderful teacher in Oklahoma named Florence Birdwell who sort of helped me. And I did. I didn't go on to opera to get my master's in opera. I ended up just moving to New York, going to acting school, and starting the journey. And I didn't have a place to stay. When looking back and having kids of my own now, it must have been the craziest thing, but my parents supported it, and I've never looked back.
Were they musicians?
Oh,
were they
I was the only person in my whole family. I just had this strange thing that happened to me. I didn't do much to earn it. I opened my mouth to sing when I was about 10 years old, and my mom says she remembers going, that's not too bad. And from there, I did the school plays. Like I said, I knew of this teacher, Florence Birdwell, so I go to Oklahoma City University where she teaches. And she had a little bit more to do with this world and this business. And she had a student named Kristen Chenoweth who had already gone to New York to start her career. So I thought, well, there's a girl from Oklahoma doing it. So I thought, I'll do that. And by the time I was a senior in college, I had done a little summer stock in Kansas, met some other people who'd been to Broadway, and I thought, well, what the heck? I'll move to New York. I'll find a place to stay. I'll stay on a couch. I'll start auditioning, and then the rest is sort of history.
Wow. There's a former Staples player, Jamie Mann, who just made his debut on Broadway in Stranger Things.
Oh, fantastic.
What is it like to make your Broadway debut?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that here I'm talking about the way I imagined it. I had created this story for myself. And in some ways, I'm very grateful for that naivete, like that sort of glamorous picture of it all, because by the time I made my Broadway debut, I had gone out to do a national tour of a show called Jekyll and Hyde, which was a very positive experience, really. But the way I made my debut was to come back into the existing show of Jekyll and Hyde that was very different from the tour. The tour had been redirected, re-choreographed, recast. The Broadway show was just about to close. It was 6 months before the end. It was very, it was in the shape of something that was about to close. I was very fresh and green and excited. And I think that making my Broadway debut was a very lonely and strange experience, I'll be honest. And I've talked about this at length because what then came after was such a celebration. I went in to do Follies, and then I went to originate a role in The Sweet Smell of Success, and then from there it kind of went up. So I've been grateful that I didn't shoot all the way to the top only to fall again. I started in these slow, incremental sort of lessons. I was constantly being humbled and constantly being taught that you're here because you love it, not because it's easy. And so I did those last 6 months of Jekyll and Hyde with a sense of confusion, only to be made more hungry to find what I had imagined, and I eventually found it. But I just want to say, because you mentioned this person, Jamie Mann.
Jamie Mann.
My first job that gave me my equity card was at the Bridgeport Downtown Cabaret Theater. Oh. I came to New York City. I went to an open call. I got this job, and it was Phantom, the Yeston Copet Phantom. And I would train out here and do the show every weekend. And the young 9-year-old boy in that show was a boy named Adam Kaplan. And I didn't know this at the time, but his wonderful parents, who lived in Westport, Connecticut, this beautiful place, would invite me over for dinner, and they would make me feel like part of the family. And I just loved this young boy. And I tried to take care of him at the theater. And he would grow up to be a big Broadway star. And I love the family. I love Adam. And I remembered Westport as being a destination that I might like to check out later in my life.
Wow. And Dr. Kaplan is a great optometrist. He's my eye doctor.
Yes. I just went to his birthday over at Rizzuto's.
There you go. Does it get old? Does it ever get old? Does being on a Broadway stage ever get, it's just a job?
It's just a job. I think I'm one of those people that, if I have an addiction, because I'm not an addictive person, thankfully. I say this because I just did this show, Days of Wine and Roses, all about it. What I realize is that if I do have one, it's theater. I love it with all my heart. It is, it's hard, it's tiring. 8 shows a week is not for the faint of heart, with no holidays, no weekends, no off season. But it does something for me, for my spirit. And so any time that I might feel like, oh, I'm just exhausted, I miss my kids, they bring them to the theater, I still say, I would choose this 1,000 times over. I'll keep choosing it.
Do you get nervous?
Oh, yes.
Still?
Oh, yeah. Oh, all the time. I think it's one thing to do a Broadway show every single day. You start to really fall into a pattern. Your muscles fall into the pattern. You feel less nervous. But I tend to do a lot of one-off events. Like Monday night, I was doing the Lincoln Center Gala and the Roundabout Gala. And you wait for 45 minutes and you just run onto the stage and sing one song that you haven't sung in years. It's those kind of things. And my heart's pounding and my voice is shaking. And I think to myself, what's wrong? You've been doing this for 30 years. Get over yourself. But I'm telling you, once you walk off the stage and you say, well, that felt pretty good, and your adrenaline's rushing, and it's sort of like that natural high that I'm talking about. You get yourself to the edge of the cliff, and it feels daunting, and you land on your feet, and you walk off, and you say it was worth it.
Wow. Yeah. And then there's another cliff.
There's hopefully, if you're lucky, there's another cliff waiting for you.
And what about opera? Is that very different from the Broadway stage?
I consider it very, very different. I'm one of those people who as an artist says we should be able to try every genre if we want to, television, film, opera. However, opera is a different beast. The people who are really, really wonderful opera artists, operatic singers, they have given their life to a discipline that begs full-time. And when I stepped into opera a few times, I've done 3 at the Met, I've changed my life over for several, maybe 6 weeks beforehand, really doing nothing but that. And I still will never be sort of up to par with, the Renee Flemings and the Joyce DiDonatos of the world, because they've given their life to the languages, to the technique, to the lifestyle. And I haven't. I've gone and done TV, and I've screamed in a Broadway stage, and I'm doing, belty type things. And so it's a very different thing. And to go back and forth opera musical theater, I think is not necessarily sustainable, but I've been very, very lucky and pleased to have been able to do a few.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Favorite role?
Well, I'll always answer the one I'm doing at the time, but right now I'm not currently doing a role. So that's a hard answer. They're like children, really. I know that's a cliche answer, but it's really true. They've fulfilled something in me in a different way, each of them. So I could say, Piazza, because it was one of the biggest things in the beginning of my career. I could say, well, that score was my favorite. That sort of experience was my favorite. We worked on it for 5 years. But then I could say something like South Pacific was my favorite because it was so gloriously fun and big. And but if I had to say all around, it would be Days of Wine and Roses because we built it for 22 years. It was the kind of acting I wanted to be challenged with. It was the kind of singing that felt natural to me. It just wasn't a big successful show, but it was artistically the most satisfying.
And how about a role that you would love, you would covet, that you haven't done?
I like to answer that question with, I'll know it when I see it. In other words, I don't have a huge ambition to do something that's already been done. I have a couple of those that I would love to have a turn at that. But I think for me, because I have such a very specific, in a way, unpopular way of singing musical theater. I mean, it's a little old-fashioned. I'm still in the classic Broadway vein. Definitely not a pop singer, no matter how hard I try. For me, it's when I have something that's glorious, it's because it's been written for me, like Bridges of Madison County, or Days of Wine and Roses, or Light in the Piazza, or something like that. So I'm looking for someone to write a new one.
Well, maybe somebody's out there.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Come on, write for Kelli.
That's right.
Do you take the train in?
I do, every time, every day. Usually I get into a pattern of, I don't like to be late, and I'm nervous about traffic. So usually my pattern is to train in, opposite the rush hour, train in, do the show, and then sometimes be driven home. Because around 11:30 or 11, there's not as much traffic.
Get on the train.
Yeah.
Do people recognize you?
Only around Lincoln Center or NYU. No, I mean, I think the wonderful thing about being in theater is that you're very anonymous. You can, now granted, would it be nice to be like, oh, I don't get a table at this restaurant? No, nobody knows. And that's the thing. You can't take yourself too seriously if you're a musical theater person, because I did one of those NBC live Peter Pan, they had done Sound of Music and and we did the numbers on that. It would take doing Peter Pan at the Gershwin Theater, which is the largest of all the Broadway theaters, sold out completely, 8 shows a week for 15 years to have the same viewership as one night on NBC live. So I think what that tells me is to stay humble and not expect for people to move over just because I come in the room. In other words, do you know who I am? And they say, nope, I don't. So I don't get recognized that much. But if I'm in a certain neighborhood, perhaps. Yeah.
Wow. So you mentioned Westport before and going to the Bridgeport Cabaret Theater. And how did you end up here? Was it because of that, or?
No. So there I was in New York doing all this doing these shows. And in fact, I was doing, it was right after Sweet Smell of Success. I was pretty young. I was 26 years old. And another fellow Broadway gal, Sherry Renee Scott, and her then husband, Kurt Deutsch, decided, even not knowing me, to set me up with their friend, Greg Naughton. And it was a blind date. I got to go see him play. And I didn't know who he was because it was before you could Google anybody. Right. So it was a night of a lot of people playing. And so several different people came out, guys. And I thought, is that him? Is that him? Is that the one? And then this guy.
And where was it?
It was down at down on Bleecker Street.
Oh, okay.
Which is Le Poisson Rouge, or it became that, but it was called something else at the time. And they were doing a Broadway mix concert. And this guy walked out on stage, and I said to my friend, if that's him, I'm done. And the only way I can explain it is that I felt like I knew him. And I got to know him. We went out on our first date several days later. And he said he was from Connecticut. He grew up in Weston, Connecticut. And we started dating, we got married, we had our first child, then our second. But over the years, we would come to Weston all the time. And I said, this is the place. This is where I first used to come. And this is the most beautiful place I've ever imagined. And he said, I never really thought about moving back home. And then his mother passed away, Pam. And we started to spend more time coming here while she was sick so that, our first child could be with her. And then after she died, he said, it's a no-brainer. We're moving out there to be near my dad, wow. Jim. And that's exactly what we did. And it's been the best thing. And he and now his new wife, Sarah, have helped us raise our children. In fact, they had them for 2 nights this week when we were both away for work. And so that's how you do it. You stay by your family if you're lucky.
And what a great gift.
Yeah.
So Greg is a musician.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Naughton is a well-known, great actor. When you guys get together, do you do musical stuff or?
Yeah, it's kind of annoying, actually. I'm sure it's annoying to other people because Greg's sister Kira is also a musician and a great actor and singer. And we've put together these Naughton family shows. In fact, we put together a very big one for the Playhouse for a fundraiser for pancreatic cancer shortly after Pam died. And it was a huge success. They raised a lot of money and for research. And that became really fun. So we've done it up in Williamstown. We're like the Naughton family singers, right? And it's very eclectic because Kira and Greg, Kira's husband is Ben, and he plays the drums. But Kira and Greg are more rock and roll. Jim can do really anything. Greg and Jim have been singing since Greg was 15 years old. Now we're going to add my son to the mix, and then my daughter and I sing together. So when that's your language in your family, we'll be cooking dinner in the kitchen and, break into a harmony or something. And it really is sort of fascinating because I didn't grow up with that, although I always had lovers of music in my family. But to actually make music together is pretty special.
Sounds like a sitcom.
Yeah, you know what? Anybody who wants to make it, we're ready.
All right, we got something else to...
Yeah, we're promoting a lot of things today.
Man. So Westport has a reputation as an arts community.
Yeah.
Is that valid?
I mean, I look for it everywhere. Obviously the stories I've heard of Paul and Joanne, Paul Newman, and with the Playhouse and the way Jim always has talked about this place and the different artists who live here. I certainly know that the school really values their arts because my son is very involved in the band. My daughter loves the theater program. I'm excited about Mark Shanahan at the Playhouse and what his plans are for it to really bring that back to life. These establishments are very important to me. Not just these kind of arts, but also you have MoCA, you have the different kind of places that really value art more than, say, where I grew up, which, I sort of had to fight for the places to where I could sing or find music. And I feel like there's a lot of opportunity here. And I could see it even expanding and being greater. And you have Musical Theater of Connecticut right on the border there of Norwalk. And I just think there are a lot of places that are really trying to keep it as and promoting it as much as we can, because I'm a person who just thinks that without knowing it, we all need art in our lives and use it more than we think. Yeah.
The Playhouse had a near-death experience a couple of years ago. They came within days of going bankrupt.
I know.
What's your relationship with the Westport Country Playhouse?
Well, I guess I'll just be really honest. I wish it was far more. I think about all the things that the Playhouse, especially when it was near death, over the pandemic, I got in touch with, they got in touch with me, I can't remember, but we did a program virtually to celebrate high schools around the area and their plays that they didn't get to do. And they got to come on and sing a song from their musical that they weren't doing, trying to highlight that. I see how many people flock to the Staples High School productions, and yet we don't have these student programs in the Playhouse. I think to myself, how many friends could I bring out to do master classes or talks at the Playhouse, to integrate the student love of the arts and then invite the community and their parents to come to the Playhouse to do that. I know they put on plays and musicals throughout the year, but what are the other functions that it can have in promoting the arts? And so I have thought to myself, there's me and there's quite a few other Broadway people that live here, but we're never really, I've done a gala for them on occasion. I did one. But I definitely think you could use your local peeps a little bit more to kind of bring in friends the way I think Paul and Joanne would have. It was a great destination to do plays and have really high, talent coming out here and doing a summer stock play. I mean, what better place to come spend your summer if you're an actor who wants to get out and spend the daytimes on the beach and then go do a play at night, you know? So it has the bones to go back and be one of those ultimate New England playhouses, summer destinations. But I have hope that that's coming back. I just feel like I was a little frustrated that it wasn't more of an artistic destination for people that I knew in the arts. Because you'd have a conversation with someone in New York about it and they weren't really familiar with it. And that's too bad because it's so close to the city. It's a perfect place.
And it's just such a wonderful building. Everything
the
about
history there. You go and you see the pictures on the walls, and what you do as an artist yourself is you say, I want to be part of this. And Justin Paul, and Benj are coming back to do the gala very soon. But you have those types of connections, and I guess they're being used. See, this is great. But they weren't. And I think that's a big mistake. Like, what can we do to celebrate and keep our doors open? And I think we artists, especially the local ones, we're interested in helping.
And how about Staples players? You mentioned that you've gone to the shows?
Absolutely. I love them. It brings me to tears how wonderful these productions are and how much effort goes into them. Greg and I often talk about this. He grew up in Weston, but we were both those kids who we did sports and arts and the musicals and we were able to do that. My only thing about what I've heard is just burnout. I worry about burnout because I know, because I didn't have as much of it growing up, and I was able to do the little play we did, or the musical, and then I also played basketball and soccer, and I did all these things. By the time I got to college to focus in on it, I was so hungry. And then I moved to New York and I was even hungrier. But what I saw happening around me were all these people just saying, I'm all done. I'm burnt out. I gave all I had in high school. I did, 80 hours a week, to it. Sure. And knowing what I know in this life it's hard enough. But if you're not hungry when you enter the workforce, because you're so burnt out, then you're not going to succeed. And so my only thing with the way we prioritize choosing, I'm either going to be a professional athlete at 12 or I'm going to be a professional actor, singer, dancer at 12. What I know for sure is that doesn't work. And most of us won't be professional athletes and most of us won't be professional actors. But the ones who then become professional and do well, it's because they still love it and they're still hungry for it. And I have met a couple of kids in Staples Players and different places they've decided they're done. Wow. They're tired. And that worries me.
Yeah.
I do think you can have really beautiful productions that are homemade and deliciously imperfect and floundering that the parents will think are glorious. Without the kids getting burnout. Mm-hmm.
You and I both shared a stage, though, at different performances in the
the Spelling Bee,
25th Putnam County Spelling Bee.
Yes.
Neither of us won.
I know.
I
feel like it was rigged. I was rigged.
Wow.
Yeah,
that was fun.
I actually had a blast. I really did, and I have every time I've. And like I said, I go to those and I take especially my youngest there, and I do. I tear up at those beautiful kids just, enjoying it and spreading joy, and it's infectious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a couple more. This is great. Talking about Westport when you are not performing, when you're not with your kids, or when you are with your kids, where do you hang out?
Well, we spend a lot of time on the water. Greg is a lover of the ocean and boats, and in the summertime, we take that boat out, and we're
You
going.
live on the river.
We live on and we're going down to all points, around here on the water. We spend a lot of time with Jim and Weston. We love different spots in Westport, different restaurants, different things to do. I mean, we really do take advantage of everything out here. I think we're in walking distance to a lot of great places. And
Do you walk to Sagadack?
oh yeah, I walk to the train
Over the bridge?
I walk. I have a wonderful neighbor who lets me cut through their yard.
Nice.
And so the train walk is about 7 minutes, and it's a pretty perfect way to be, and we can see ourselves the way our kids have thrived in this school system, and but beyond that, we can see ourselves in our winter season too, like all the activities and all the things to do. And we walk down to the Levitt and the library where we're sitting right now, and there are wonderful amenities here, and we plan to use them, continually use them as we go through all these chapters.
Two more. Go-to restaurant. What's your go-to restaurant?
It's funny. We as a family go to Mexico.
Ah.
We love it. We love it. I mean, we love all the sort of fancier ones for sure. We've been to all those and really enjoy them. But just as a family, I love the owners of Mexico, the staff, the sweet. They give us a hard time because I hate onions and my husband can't eat tomatoes. So we're the family that comes in and asks for guacamole plain. And they make fun of us, say, oh, extra onions, extra tomatoes. But we go there all the time just because we love a good sort of family-owned business.
That's great.
Yeah.
And the last one is best acoustics.
Oh.
If you were going to, sing and needed some good acoustics, where would it be?
In Westport? Okay, because I was having a hard time choosing around the world.
Right here in Westport.
Oh gosh, that's a good question.
Tunnel by the train station.
Well,
tunnel on Main Street.
It's a funny thing to admit, but one time during the pandemic, we would sneak into the Levitt and like do things, like sit in the grass and everything. And there's this, not the stage, but there's this little thing at the back.
Yes.
And I've stood there and looked at the stage and sung before, which is pretty interesting. And I've sung in the hall there at Christ and Holy Trinity Church. It's called Branson Hall.
Branson
I think.
Hall down. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good too. I'm trying to think a couple of different places, but this library, I've sung a few things here. It's a beautiful, it's for it being so open and having windows and stuff. It's a pretty good acoustic. So I don't know. I need to try out more spots. Maybe that's a thing. I'm going to check them off and see where the best place to sing is.
Okay. One more thing for people to let us know.
Yeah.
If you got a good place for Kelli O'Hara to sing, let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. And then other people will follow suit, hopefully. But there are great spots, and there's a lot of people who love to come listen to music, I've found, and so that's why we have to keep the arts strong and going.
Great message. Kelli O'Hara, thank you for coming to the library stage, not a Broadway stage, but it'll have to do. And I learned a lot, so thanks
Dan.
for all you do for all of us.
Well, thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
And thanks for all you do for all of us. You keep us aware of everything, and I love it.
It takes a village, and I'm glad to share this one with you. Thanks.
Thank you.